and the mass invasion of migrants, many of whom despise the West, and the people who love it. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is pushing back, saying in recent days we have seen people trying to interfere in our democracy and seeking to stir up division on our streets.
So you could really say that a moment is happening across the Western world right now, especially for white people, if I were to be honest, where decades of left-wing conditioning are coming undone in the span of just a few gruesome moments that unfortunately perfectly summarize everything that's actually happening, right? The reality, not the media portrayal of what's going on in all of these collective countries. Whether that was them trying to spend decades shutting down alleged far-right conspiracies or chanting slogans like diversity is our strength, clamoring for the ideas of open borders, open jails, and mass crime. It's funny how just a snap of the finger moment that really shocks and horrifies people can make all of that mental conditioning come completely undone. And we've, of course, spoken extensively about the Austin Metcalf, Carmelo Anthony trial here in America that I think is almost bigger than just that case itself. It's very telling to watch what the public reaction has been, frankly, against white America coming from the race communists and their collective support base and populations there, where, you know, you're really discovering, no, these people never were calling for equality or even diversity or anything along those lines. Indeed, it was the case all along that they just have mere resentment and, frankly, a bloodlust against white people. But it doesn't actually stop there, because if you didn't know, over in the UK right now, we're witnessing a similar situation, maybe on an even worse scale, where society is effectively coming undone over a handful of similar cases, whether that's the Henry Nowak killing. And if you don't know what that is, we'll explain it, but this is basically a guy who died bleeding out in police custody after his migrant criminal attacker accused them of being racist to the police. And apparently, according to the police, that was a full justification. The mere allegation that a white person might be racist, even though that was not true, is grounds for you to die and for them to neglect you and effectively watch you bleed out. This is actually what happened over in the UK. And then just days after that video goes public and it becomes this big national scandal and there's the outrage, we have a different case in which, in Northern Ireland, where a African migrant literally tries to, and I don't want to get too graphic about this, but this is what went down, right? Literally tried to behead a white Northern Irish citizen, and we have the police effectively engaging in a cover-up of that as well, right? And so it's just this, it's almost, you could say to an extent, a white George Floyd moment. But the thing is, that's not even a fair statement to make, because unlike George Floyd, for example, Henry Nowak did not overdose on fentanyl. He sat there and bled out in police custody as they allow. It's actually worse than George Floyd, significantly worse. As is, I would argue, this, again, attempted beheading. Like, this stuff is all very crazy and insane. But of course, we're watching that, and then simultaneously. So you compound that with everything else, and you understand these are not just isolated cases happening, especially in the UK. There is this systemic issue, whether that's been murders, attacks, stabbings, sexual assault, robbery, all of these things. Mass crime taking place in the UK and Europe as a whole as a result of the immigration problem, right? The migrants who have poured into these countries and overwhelmingly and disproportionately are just not being societal contributors in any way. Massive tax negatives. We're relying on government benefits, while, of course, endangering public safety en masse, right? A very disproportionately high crime rate compared to the native population. And, you know, I would argue it's this has been going on for years. The public has been saying, no more migration. We want to shut this down. Supposedly democratically elected governments have not listened at all. And as a matter of fact, they've slandered their own native citizens for suggesting, for example, that Britain should be a British country, for example. And this is all sort of boiling over now to the point where, you know, you're watching even protests break out, riots break out. But my favorite conspiracy theory of it all actually comes from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who is suggesting that foreign influence, specifically foreign influence from Americans like JD Vance and Elon Musk, is the reason why his people are outraged. It has nothing to do with the fact we are witnessing some pretty brutal and gruesome migrant crime killings of white native citizens, and then the government try to cover that up, right? That's not what it could be about at all. It's the fact that JD Vance and Elon Musk are going on X and supporting a social movement that long existed within your own country to begin with. And so that's erupted as well, right? We're watching the Labor government now looking for any excuse, and it seems to be honestly convenient these days for European leftist governments to just blame America for everything and paint the Trump administration as the boogeyman source of their problems. That is now happening as well. We'll explain all of what's happening in today's video over in the UK with, again, the sort of Austin Metcalf of their country all happening at the same time. Not a good day to be a race communist anywhere in the world, frankly, because if one thing wasn't enough, now it's another. But hey, that's the reality of what's happening in these countries, so it shouldn't be surprising. Let's get into it. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, let's start by just explaining this Henry Nowak situation for those not familiar. And so this all went down in, I believe, yes, Southampton, England, where you have this guy, Henry Nowak. He was walking home, and he has a brief interaction with a Sikh man, a Sikh migrant, by the name of Vikram Singh Digwa, I believe is the name there. So effectively, it's sort of similar to Metcalf, where allegedly there was this verbal altercation that went on. Apparently, Nowak jokingly called Digwa a bad man, which, badman, the grime or Jamaican British street, that's just slang they use over there, okay? And after all of that, this Sikh, who's carrying a ceremonial dagger, basically in their religion, they're supposed to carry around these knives, pulls out the knife and then stabs Nowak 5 different times, and he's sitting there bleeding out. Now, the Sikh, first of all, it gets very gruesome about this. He's like filming Nowak, while he's fleeing, while he's on the ground. The Sikh is taking total joy in the fact that he basically just stabbed this white person for no reason, even if it was over a verbal altercation. This is the same thing they tried to justify about Carmelo Anthony. Oh, because words were exchanged, that fully justifies you murdering someone. That, of course, has never been the case. But basically, officers arrived to the scene. And by the time this white British citizen, they get there, he's already bleeding out. You have this Sikh guy standing over him, who, by the way, was carrying a dagger, right? A ceremonial knife, but okay, he's carrying a blade. Nowak is there dying on the scene. He's saying he can't breathe. He's calling out to police. He's been stabbed. Please help me. And instead, the police do not render him any aid while he's sitting there dying because this migrant criminal stabbed him. As a matter of fact, they proceed to handcuff Nowak. That is right. They handcuff the white guy who got attacked and is bleeding out on the scene. And you may ask yourself why that is the case. Well, it is simply because of the fact that Digwa falsely claimed to the police that Nowak had racially abused him and knocked off his turban. So basically, because that guy is racist, as police, we're not supposed to render aid to a dying man on the scene. In fact, let's handcuff him instead. And by the way, that was never true. The Sikh guy was completely lying. He was, of course, convicted of murder, and this is the whole situation that went down. So effectively, right? So you can be a white person who gets attacked by a migrant criminal, and you're bleeding out and dying on the scene. Simply the fact that the migrant criminal tells the police that you're racist, you are not afforded protection under the law. That is effectively what happened. And so they handcuff him here, and he's literally bleeding out, actually saying, I can't breathe, right? And this is all what went down. And so, you could sit there and say, but the Sikh got convicted of murder. Okay, that's pretty common sense. Clearly, he pulled out this knife unprovoked and started stabbing people. But the officers in question, I would point out, really did not face any consequences. Unlike George Floyd, for example, where even the officers who are standing on the scene, no contributing factor to that, or having several years in prison. At most, just one of those police officers resigned. The police force apologized, but no criminal charges were brought down. You see why we kind of frame this as almost, you could say, like a white George Floyd, but again, that's not a fair comparison because this thing was not a fentanyl overdose that we just watched. And so it really went down as the perfect prime example of how it's not just an issue of migrant criminals in the streets, but really the way in which the state, the system itself, protects those migrant criminals in a very transparent and outrageous sense. You can be bleeding out because you just got stabbed by a migrant criminal, and the police will sit there and believe the migrant criminal over you, even though you're the one bleeding and he's the one with the knife. I mean, are we lacking any common sense here, right? And at the very least, if you don't know what happened, help the guy, render first aid to a man who is dying on the scene. But no, you are apparently in the UK not afforded those rights as a white British person. And so just an utterly insane situation. It's also worth noting too, by the way, about even this knife itself. The British government and leftist governments have since come out and reinforced basically the right that Sikhs have because of their religion. Their religion says they're supposed to carry these knives or something, that they're allowed to carry the knives around. And you may sit there and say, oh, well, Second Amendment, right? That should, that theory, that concept should, it's an American concept, but, the spirit of that should apply. Oh, yeah, why can't people carry knives? But here is the thing. Regular British citizens are not allowed to carry knives. Only this population claiming some type of religious reason is allowed to circumvent the rules and openly carry knives around in the country, which I would also point out is a ridiculous concept to me. I understand that Sikhs in general are one of the generally less problematic, immigrant populations as a whole, right, per capita in general, compared to maybe the other ones who are coming in. But it's still, that's insane. Like if you can be a white British, Henry Nowak, if he had also had a knife and pulled that out in self-defense, he would have at least been convicted of illegally having a knife and probably murder as well. But because this guy is brown and practices basically a brown religion, they're the only people in the UK who are allowed to carry around blades. I mean, I also find that to be utterly insane. Nonetheless, so JD Vance also chimed in on this whole situation, which of course, as I hinted at in the beginning, led to Keir Starmer accusing now the protests erupting in the UK for justified reasons. And by the way, that were erupting long before the US government said anything about this. But take a listen to apparently the new feud that is going on between Vance and Starmer over Vance merely having an opinion over this situation that is pretty clear cut.
So protests continue in the UK as outrage grows over the stabbing death of Henry Nowak, a British teen murdered in cold blood.
It's gotten the attention of leaders here in the U.S. who are now slamming Britain's liberal migration policy.
Madeline Rivera is live in Washington with those details. Maddie, good morning.
Good morning. Vice President J.D. Vance waded into the dispute when he posted this tweet on X. Henry Nowak died the same way a civilization dies. He should still be alive today, and he would be if the last few generations of European elites had stood their ground against the politics of self-hatred and the mass invasion of migrants, many of whom despise the West, and the people who love it. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is pushing back, saying, in recent days, we have seen people trying to interfere in our democracy and seeking to stir up division on our streets. The Nowak family are grieving after Henry's horrific murder. They have said they do not want his death to be used to create further division, hatred, or tension. We should be respecting their wishes. Many in the UK are angry, though, after police body cam footage showed what took place the evening of Nowak's attack in December. The video shows the killer, Vikram Digwa, who's Sikh, lying to police saying he was the victim, alleging that Nowak racially assaulted him. Police handcuffed the 18-year-old Nowak despite him telling police multiple times that he'd been stabbed.
So yeah, apparently JD Vance having and expressing a mere opinion on the situation equates to foreign interference in British democracy. If you as a non-British person, you're not even going there agitating, causing problems, getting involved. You're just saying, oh, here's what I think of that issue in Britain. that's interference in democracy. And apparently, according to Keir Starmer, that is what is actually to blame for the outrage right now, the protests, the mostly peaceful protests in some cases, if you know what that word is supposed to mean. It was the people were not angry before. They were not upset before, but JD Vance, a person who I'm sure, British people are just clamoring to listen to. They're all looking to him for their guidance, right? The vice president of a country that's not even their country. He stepped in, and then suddenly now that's why people are pissed off at my government and its system. I mean, not only is that completely ridiculous, but in that case, okay, I don't want to hear smug, obnoxious European leftists ever commenting on the United States of America ever again, because this goes both ways. In that case, let's all blame Keir Starmer for not just interfering in American democracy, but you could argue helping to steal the 2020 election. Because, if foreign interference means elections are stolen and that's what they did, well, okay, let's all blame Keir for this then.
Like you, I was shocked and angered at the killing of George Floyd and the response of President Trump and the US authorities to the peaceful protests, to people rightly demanding justice, has been an affront to humanity.
So yeah, apparently I never looked at it this way, but the entire reason that BLM terrorists burned down the country in 2020 and why the election was ultimately borrowed from President Trump is actually just because Keir Starmer put out that 12-second video. He interfered in our democracy, and that's what went down. None of it was organic at all. Although, let's be honest, this is not the first time the Labour government has done this, and it's kind of just a convenient excuse, is it not? It's very easy to, I guess, downplay genuine outrage from your own citizens by just accusing it all of being a foreign op. And let's be honest, that type of stuff happens on all sides of politics, sure. But what I find to be hilarious is that, it's one thing to argue that, oh, so-and-so's audience on the internet is foreign bots, because it's the internet. Okay, we get all that. Your people are out in the streets. This is not internet talk. This is not something happening in an abstract sense. Your people are angry out in the streets. Physically, you can see that they're there. And I don't think those people are largely Americans, but they did the same exact thing with United Kingdom. We did that story a couple of weeks ago, actually, where, Keir tries to revoke the ETA, right? The travel authorization, basically the quote unquote visa, not exactly, but he tries to ban travel for European right-wing activists, including even Polish members of the EU Parliament, claiming these are far-right agitators trying to come and stir problems in the UK, all because they were going to speak at the United Kingdom rally, which, by the way, was still massive and was still attended by your own citizens and still had British speakers. But, again, when you're a failing government, I guess it's very easy to do. I'm sure Keir is also going to argue that America's the reason why his economy has been in a totally flailing state for the entire Labour reign over the government, and same situation, I guess, with the outrage right now. It's not because they open the borders and they have this just utterly insane agenda to destroy the British people and to exalt all migrant criminality and terrorism and all this stuff. No. It's just because JD Vance was riling people up on the internet, and that's why his own people are mostly peacefully protesting against him in the streets. That's what a theory, right? But it actually did not stop, because already we have all of that outrage over Henry, and then just days later, there's this other viral situation where an African migrant, he was originally identified as Somalian, now apparently they're saying he's from Sudan, but not a significant difference there, was caught on camera in this extremely gruesome, horror movie style attack where he literally tries to behead a white person in Northern Ireland. Okay, so just another case of insane migrant crime. This is a pattern. This is all happening from people who obviously should not be here in the first place. But if you remotely suggest that, they say, oh, well, it's racist or something like that. But again, it's not just a situation of some bad guy did something. Much like with Henry, no, there's also a government systemic sort of cover-up of all of it, because you listen to the Northern Irish police here and over in Belfast, right? And their current argument is that they're ruling out a terrorist motivation. This could not possibly have been some type of terroristic or hate-motivated attack, despite the fact that they have no information regarding a motive. So you might look at that and say, if you don't know the motive, how could you rule it out being a terrorist attack? Well, that's what we're dealing with, right? We're not just dealing with a population or large subsets of a population of people who are violently attacking the native white citizens. No, it's also the fact the government, and this I'd argue is the real reason why people are so upset, right? The government is systemically covering for the criminals, whether that was the situation in Northampton or now the situation in Belfast, Northern Ireland. There seems to be a pattern here.
The investigation is at early stages. As I've said already, we're ruling out a terrorist motivation at this stage. However, our minds remain open to the various possibilities as to what the motivation is behind this. We will, of course, as we move ahead, be working with all of those who might be able to provide us further information and context as why what happened last night.
So yeah, I think this is the prime example of exactly what we're talking about, which is that the people are not just upset over what happened, although it is upsetting in itself, but it's also the fact that the government they democratically elect, allegedly, to protect and serve them, allegedly, has a coordinated hostile agenda against its own citizenry, right? They're doing the exact opposite of that. In fact, not only did they make mistake number one by allowing these migrants who are not en masse contributing anything positive to British society whatsoever, to, the moment they allowed those refugee boats to come on the shores, that was a mistake. And, but secondly, you would think, okay, if you're going to have them there, then can we at least enforce the law against them? Can the system even be remotely equal? Well, no, that's not the case. Because first of all, we have found out if you get freaking attacked by a migrant, you may not even be protected by the police because simply you are white and they are one of the migrants. But then even further, in the cases where these people do get arrested or do end up in jail, I mean, it's a similar pattern to what we see in America very often with black criminals, but it's the same thing where they get very light slaps on the wrist, 1 to 2 years in jail. You don't even get deported. We've seen some insane cases of that happening with rapes, for example, against European women, which, these people are supposed to be the feminists. They're leftists. They're supposed to stand up for them. But apparently, no. If you're an Islamic migrant, that's not the case at all, right? We're just going to have a total system that does not protect women at all, because protecting racial minority groups and protecting so-called immigrants, migrants, refugees, whatever, asylum seekers, whatever you want to call them, is more important. And again, that's why people are outraged. It's not hard to understand. It's the result of a thing that people were calling for an end to for so many years. The government refused. It's getting your citizens hurt. They're still not listening. Voting doesn't even change it. So that's why people are angry. Not hard to understand. Not hard to understand. But of course, we have the theory of liberal media, which is that it has nothing to do with that. Rather, for example, we have Australian news tonight coming out and alleging the civil unrest you're witnessing in Belfast, Northern Ireland, is simply a product of Elon Musk. That is right. This theory is just continuing. None of these countries apparently have any agency. It's like the same way that people in America think Israel is to blame for like literally everything that happens. That's the same thing over in the UK. Okay, in the UK, I guess anything that happens in their country is simply the result of Elon Musk and JD Vance. Take a listen though. They're actually doing this.
A violent knife attack by a Sudanese asylum seeker in Belfast on Monday led to a night of riots and vehicles set alight in the city. Video of the horrific knife attack, which we've chosen not to show, was posted online. Far-right agitators then shared the material, using it to stoke racial tensions and push for violent retribution. The UK regulator has powers directing tech companies to remove violent posts and control racially charged responses. But Elon Musk chose instead to double down on inciting rhetoric on his platform.
Now, just to be clear, before the British government tries to take down this video as well, we are not calling for violence or retribution. We're not calling for anything, as a matter of fact. We're simply reporting to our audience what is going on. We're not even showing the videos of the attacks, which is really due to the fact that YouTube is very strict about, showing graphic violence of that sort. But people can go find it for themselves, okay? But I guess they're also upset about that. Oh, how dare you show the video of what actually happened? I mean, okay, I get it. It's gruesome. It's graphic. You know, there should be a label so you know that's what you're about to watch and all. But let's be honest, it's really the fact that I guess they're upset people are seeing it, right? People are seeing what happened. They don't want people to see what happened. Frankly, they don't want people to be talking about it either, because, you know, it's one thing to say, oh, we're going to censor calls for violence or something. But then it more broadly goes to, oh, Elon Musk is quote unquote inciting racial tension. Well, what does that even mean, right? That's the same type of crap as hate speech, but it really is, you know, two things again going on here at the end of the day. They don't want people talking about it at all. It's not about violent or peaceful or whatever. They don't want anyone to be upset or protesting over the killings that took place. And then secondly, it's again just very easy to go out and blame Americans for causing all of these problems. No, it has nothing to do with Americans. It has nothing to do with JD Vance or Elon Musk. Your people are upset about you because of decisions your government made that led to this. It is that simple. Stop blaming us. We don't have anything to do with this, okay? But, you know, at the same time, well, I'm not sure that these left-wing governments, or even, no, forget the left-wing governments, the political global left as a whole, is really looking more credible after this entire thing. You know, we've probably understood these issues. Those of you watching this channel have understood these issues for many years now, but you know, if that's almost the global wake-up call that shows normies what's really happening, well, then it is what it is. And again, that's probably the real reason they're censoring this stuff, is even if you don't get violent, even if you don't go out to protest, the simple understanding that this whole situation gives you of what's really happening in Western countries, and yes, a coordinated systemic attack against native citizens, and let's be honest, white people, okay, that's what it's about. It's mass resentment against white people, just opens your eyes, I guess, to the lies of the left-wing conditioning, right, of what the globalists have been trying to push. And you know, it's very damaging to them. That's why they don't want you talking about it. It's that simple. You know, that's the truth. So maybe it's even deeper than, oh, will reform end up winning the next election? No, if this is changing people's entire attitudes towards like mass migration and national identity and so-called diversity as a whole. And that's what it's really about. And that's why they're accusing even videos of this one as foreign interference that's inciting racial tension by simply pointing out what's going on in their own country, you know? But that's what it is. Anyways, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.